The Remans are a humanoid race that inhabited the planet Remus until the year 2386. A nocturnal race, the Remans shun light and are characterized by their imposing heights, gray skin, large ears, keen eyesight in the dark, and the possession of telepathic abilities. The history of the Reman species can be traced to the Vulcans during the time of the Sundering, when several starships left the planet in order to continue their way of life elsewhere. These ships discovered the twin worlds of Romulus and Remus. Because of its hospitable climate, Romulus was settled. There, homes were built, plants were seeded, and the people lived a free life. However, in order to continue their civilization, a lot of resources were required. Thus, it was decided that Remus needed to be settled as it possessed a wealth and riches and resources that were needed to fuel the creation of a new society. To set an example, a Romulan named Karatek decided that his ship clan would develop a settlement on the hostile world of Remus. Those first that settled on Remus consisted of miners and engineers who believed that their labor would be rewarded with a life on Romulus with the rest of their kind. However, even before their work began, Karatek and his people were betrayed and left in exile on Remus, where they worked essentially as slaves. It was during this time that the Remans were born. It was known that, similar to Romulans, the Remans possessed the Vulcan genes for telepathy within their DNA. It was also learned that any Romulan followers of Serac who possessed the telepathic abilities among their kind were banished to Remus. After one Romulan, Rifas, blundered out onto the ice of the planet's surface in what appeared to be in a suicide attempt, he encountered a colony of extramorphiles who thrived there. They revived Rifas and began to alter him to more effectively live on Remus. Upon Rifas's return to his colony, their doctors began adapting the extramorphiles' work, and soon the entire colony was being slowly mutated. They developed the hairless, pale skin, sunken eyes, and powerful telepathic abilities that later Remans are seen to possess. 2 or 3 generations later, a war erupted between Romulus and Remus. The two Vulcan splinter races fought a savage war, but the Romulans ultimately controlled the space lanes, thus leading the Remans to starve. This war lasted for a little more than a year, with the Romulans emerging as the conquerors and the Remans becoming the conquered. Thus began the relationship of master and slave, with the Remans becoming a second-class people who had formed an uneasy partnership with their tyrannical rulers. In later years, the government of Romulus began to suppress any mention of these events, which were largely forgotten except for a select few in later generations. It was known that there were multiple times where a Reman rose against the oppressed class in an attempt to overthrow their Romulan rulers, though all of these attempts failed. That was until the late 2370s. Then, the Remans came under leadership of a human clone named Shinzon. Shinzon's tactical brilliance during the Dominion War allowed him and his Reman brethren to rise to prominence within the Imperial Romulan fleet, so much so that the Star Empire's ability to control them was questioned, with many in the Romulan government believing them to now be a private army. These fears proved well-founded. After winning the support of key members of the Senate and Imperial fleet, Shinzon had the Senate Imperator assassinated and assumed power. After Shinzon's death and failure to bring about any substantial change, the Remans turned to Zeomex. Seizing the opportunities made in the wake of the Romulan Civil War, Zeomex worked to get full citizenship for all Remans, and even earned a seat on the new Romulan Senate. In 2385, he successfully negotiated with the newly appointed Empress Donatra for a new home for all Remans, the colony world of Craterus. In 2386, the Reman mines were shut down as the people migrated to their new home. There, they remained until the year 2409, when a joint Alachi-Tal Shiar task force invaded the planet and killed many of its inhabitants. With Zeomex missing, Obisek, who was the former commander of the Craterus militia, took on the mantle of leadership and successfully saved his people from extinction. Eventually, in 2410, Obisek brokered a long-term peace with the Romulan Republic government, and they were allowed to settle on certain continents of the Romulans' new homeworld, Mol Rihan. This concludes today's Kark lore video. I'm curious to hear what all of you think about the subjugation and slavery that affected the Remans throughout history. Do you think it was fair for the Romulans to treat them as such, or do you think that eventually, whether the Romulans actually subjugated them initially, that the Remans were going to break apart and become their own entity no matter what? I'm curious to hear what you guys and gals think about that. I'm also curious to hear what you guys think about the Romulan Republic as a whole, and the idea of them living with the Remans on Mo Rihan. That's going to lead me into our next lore video, where I talk about the Romulan Republic government featured in Star Trek Online. Thank you guys and gals for checking out this video. If you enjoyed it, please throw a like and a subscribe up on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at RealKetwolski, and I appreciate all of you guys and gals checking out this video. Live long and prosper, my Trekkies!